The Daily Laws: 366 Meditations on Power, Seduction, Mastery, Strategy, and Human Nature by Robert Greene. January 1. Discover your calling. Everyone holds his fortune in his own hands, like a sculptor. The raw material he will fashion into a figure. But it's the same with that type of artistic activity as with all others. We are merely born with the capability to do it. The skill to mold the material into what we want must be learned and attentively cultivated. By Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. You possess a kind of inner force that seeks to guide you toward your life's task, what you are meant to accomplish in the time that you have to live. In childhood, this force was clear to you. It directed you toward activities and subjects that fit your natural inclinations, that sparked a curiosity that was deep and primal. In the intervening years, the force tends to fade in and out as you listen more to parents and peers, to the daily anxieties that wear away at you. This can be the source of your unhappiness, your lack of connection to who you are and what makes you unique. The first move toward mastery is always inward, learning who you really are and reconnecting with that innate force. Knowing it with clarity, you will find your way to the power career path, and everything else will fall into place. It is never too late to start this process. Daily Law: mastery is a process, and discovering your calling is the starting point. January 2. Reconnect with your childhood obsession. When Marie Curie, the future discoverer of radium, was 4 years old, she wandered into her father's study and stood transfixed before a glass case that contained all kinds of laboratory instruments for chemistry and physics experiments. She would return to that room again and again to stare at the instruments, imagining all sorts of experiments she could conduct with these tubes and measuring devices. Years later, when she entered a real laboratory for the first time and did some experiments herself, she reconnected immediately with her childhood obsession. She knew she had found her vocation. Daily Law: you were obsessed with it as a child for a reason. Reconnect with it. January 3. The Voice. The way to recover the meaning of life and the worthwhileness of life is to recover the power of experience, to have impulse voices from within, and to be able to hear these impulse voices from within. By Abraham Maslow. From the time I was young, I entranced with words. I can remember in the 4th grade, the teacher did this activity where she put up the word carpenter, and she asked us to come up with as many words as we could with just those letters: ant, pet, car, etc., etc. And I just thought, wow, you mean you can take letters like this and recombine them into words? I was entranced. These childhood attractions are hard to put into words. Abraham Maslow called it impulse voices. He noticed that children know exactly what they like and dislike from the very early age. It is extremely human and powerful. You had those impulse voices too. You hated this kind of activity and you loved that other one. You didn't like math, but you were drawn to words. You were exhilarated by certain kinds of books and fell promptly asleep with other kinds. The importance of recognizing these early inclinations is that they are clear indications of an attraction that is not infected by the desires of other people. They are not something embedded in you and your parents, which come with a more superficial connection, something more verbal and conscious. Coming instead from somewhere deeper, these inclinations can only be your own reflections of your unique chemistry. Daily Law: do something today that you used to love doing as a kid. Try to reconnect with your impulse voices. January 4. It is already within you. Sooner or later, something seems to call us into a particular path. You may remember this something as a signal calling in childhood, when an urge out of nowhere, a fascination, a peculiar turn of event struck, like annunciation. This is what I must do. This is what I've got to have. This is who I am. James Hillman. As you become more sophisticated, you often lose touch with these signals from your primal core. They can be buried beneath all the other subjects you have studied. Your power and future can depend on reconnecting with this core and returning to your origins. You must dig for signs of such inclinations in your earliest years. Look for its traces in visceral reactions to something simple, a desire to repeat an activity that you never tired of, a subject that stimulated an unusual degree of curiosity, feeling of power attached to particular actions. It is already there within you. You have nothing to create. You merely need to dig and refine what has been buried inside of you all along. If you reconnect with this core at any age, some element of that primitive attraction will spark back to life, indicating a path that can ultimately become your life's task. Daily law. Ask someone who recalls your childhood what they remember about your interests. Get reacquainted with those early passions. January 5. Know what you're drawn to and immerse yourself. The contemporary anthropologist, linguist Daniel Everett grew up on the California-Mexico border, in a cowboy town. From a very early age, he found himself drawn to the Mexican culture around him. Everything about it fascinated him. The sound of the words spoken by the migrant workers, the food, the manners that were so different from the Anglo world. He immersed himself as much as he could in their language and culture. This would transform into a lifelong interest in the other, the diversity of cultures on the planet, and what that means about our evolution. What's something you've always felt a pull toward? Dive deep into it today. Daily Law. January 6. Change is the law. In dealing with your career and its inevitable changes, you must think in the following way. You are not tied to a particular position. Your loyalty is not to a career or a company. You are committed to your life's task, to giving it full expression. It is up to you to find it and guide it correctly. It is not up to others to protect or help you. You are on your own. Change is inevitable, particularly in such a revolutionary moment as ours. Since you are on your own, it is up to you to foresee the changes going on right now in your profession. You must adapt your life's task to these circumstances. You do not hold on to the past ways of doing things, because that will ensure you will fall behind and suffer for it. You are flexible and always looking to adapt. If change is forced upon you, you must resist the temptation to overreact or feel sorry for yourself. Before he became the great boxing trainer, Freddie Roach was forced to retire from boxing. He instinctively found his way back to the ring because he understood that what he loved was not boxing per se, but competitive sports and strategizing. Thinking in this way, he could adapt his inclinations to a new direction within boxing. Like Roach, you don't want to abandon the skills and experience you have gained, but to find a new way to apply them. Your eye is on the future, not the past. Often, such creative readjustments lead to a superior path for us. We are shaken out of our complacency and forced to reassess where we are headed. Daily law. Adapt your inclinations. Avoid having rigid goals and dreams. Change is the law. January 7. Money and success. For many people, the pursuit of money and status can supply them with plenty of motivation and focus. Such types would consider figuring out their calling in life a monumental waste of time and an antiquated notion. But in the long run, this philosophy often yields the most impractical of results. We all know the effects of hyper intention. If we want and need desperately to sleep, we are less likely to fall asleep. If we absolutely must give the best talk possible at some conference, we become hyper anxious about the result, and the performance suffers. If we desperately need to find an intimate partner or make friends, we are more likely to push them away. If instead we relax and focus on other things, we are more likely to fall asleep or give a great talk or charm people. The most pleasurable things in life occur as a result of something not directly intended and expected. When we try to manufacture happy moments, they tend to disappoint us. The same goes to the dogged pursuit of money and success. Many of the most successful, famous, wealthy individuals do not begin with an obsession with money and status. One prime example would be Steve Jobs, who amassed quite a fortune in his relatively short life. He actually cared for very little for material possessions. His singular focus was on creating the best and most original designs, and he did so. Good fortune followed him. Daily law. Concentrate on maintaining a high sense of purpose, and success will flow to you naturally. January 8. Occupy your own niche. As a child growing up in Madras, India, in the late 1950s, V.S. Ramachandra knew he was different. In his loneliness, he would often wander along the beach, and soon he became fascinated by the incredible variety of seashells that wash up on shore. He began to collect them and study the subject in detail. Soon, he was drawn to the strangest varieties of seashells, such as the Cenophora, an organism that collects discarded shells and uses them for camouflage. In a way, he was like the Cenophora, an anomaly. In nature, these anomalies often serve a larger evolutionary purpose. They can lead to the occupation of new ecological niches, offering a greater chance of survival. Over the years, he transferred his boyhood interest into other subjects, human anatomical abnormalities, peculiar phenomena in chemistry, and so on. He went to medical school, then became a professor in visual psychology at the University of California at San Diego. He became intrigued by the phenomenon of phantom limbs. People who have had an arm or leg amputated and yet still feel a paralyzing pain in the missing limb. He proceeded to conduct experiments on phantom limbs subjects. These experiments lead to some exciting discoveries about the brain itself, as well as a novel way to relieve such patients on their pain. Studying anomalous neurological disorders would be the subject to which he could devote to the rest of his life. It was as if he had come full circle to the days of collecting the rarest form of seashells. Daily law. Embrace your strangeness. Identify what makes you different. Fuse those things together and become an anomaly. January 9. Find inspiration from your heroes. As a young boy growing up in North Carolina, John Coltrane felt different and strange. He was much more serious than his schoolmates. He experienced emotional and spiritual longingness he did not know how to verbalize. He drifted into music more as a hobby, taking up the saxophone and playing in his high school band. Then, a few years later, he saw the great jazz saxophonist Charlie Bird Parker perform live. And the sounds Parker produced touched Coltrane to the core. Something primal and personal came through Parker's saxophone, a voice from deep within. Coltrane suddenly saw the means for expressing his uniqueness and giving a voice to his own spiritual longings. He began to practice the instrument with such intensity that within a decade he transformed himself into perhaps the greatest jazz artist of his era. You must understand the following. In order to master a field, you must love the subject and feel a profound connection to it. Your interest must transcend the field and the border on the religious. For Coltrane, it was not music, but giving voice to powerful emotions. Daily law. Are there people whose work affects you in powerful way? Analyze this and use them as models. January 10. Embrace your weirdness. What do we say about masters? They're one of a kind. There's never been a Steve Jobs ever before. There's never been a Warren Buffett. There's never been an Albert Einstein. They're unique. They embrace what made them different. Yes, it comes with some pain. With my books, particularly the 48 Laws of Power, you might hate it. You might think it's satanic, but I can guarantee you've never read or seen a book that looks like it. The sections I created, the opening paragraphs, the quotes on the sides, the shapes, the book reflects me and my weirdness. The publisher was frightened by it. They wanted a more conventional book, and I said, no. I know I've never published anything before, but I'm sticking to what I have here. I stuck to what was weird and strange about me. Daily law. Always stick to what makes you weird, odd, strange, different. That's your source of power. January 11. What makes you feel more alive? Sometimes an inclination becomes clear through a particular activity that brings with it a feeling of heightened power. As a child, Martha Graham felt intensely frustrated by her inability to make others understand her in a deep way. Words seemed inadequate. Then one day, she saw her first dance performance. The lead dancer had a way of expressing certain emotions through movement. It was visceral, not verbal. She started dance lessons soon thereafter and immediately stood her vocation. Only when dancing could she feel alive and expressive. Years later, she would go on to invent a whole new form of dance and revolutionize the genre. Daily law. Do something that makes you feel at the peak of your being today. January 12. The obstacle is the way. Some people do not become aware of inclinations or future career paths in their childhood, but instead are made painfully aware of their limitations. They are not good at what others seem to find easy or manageable. The idea of a calling in life is alien to them. In some cases, they've internalized the judgments and criticisms of others and come to see themselves as essentially deficient. If they are not careful, this can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Nobody faced this fate more powerfully than Temple Grandin. In 1950, at the age of 3, Temple Grandin was diagnosed with autism. A doctor had suggested she be institutionalized for the rest of her life. Through the help of speech therapists, she was able to avoid such a fate and attend regular school. She slowly developed an intense interest in animals and in autism itself. This led to a career path in sciences. With her exceptional reasoning powers, she has been able to throw light on the phenomenon of autism and explain it in a way no one else has ever been able to. Somehow, she had managed to overcome all of the seemingly insurmountable obstructions in her path and find her way to the life's task that suited her to perfection. When you confront your limitations, you are moved to respond in some way that is creative. And as it was for Temple Grandin, it may be in a way that no one else has done or even thought of before. Daily law. Confront one of your limitations. one of the obstructions in your path today. Break beyond it. Climb over it. Think your way around it. Don't run from it. It was created for you. January 13. Master the small things. When you are faced with deficiencies instead of strengths and inclinations, this is the strategy you must assume. Ignore your weaknesses and resist the temptation to be more like others. Instead, direct yourself toward the small things you are good at. Do not dream or make grand plans for the future, but instead concentrate on becoming proficient at these simple and immediate skills. This will bring you confidence and become a base from which you can expand to other pursuits. Proceeding in this way, step by step, you will hit upon your life's task. Your life's task does not always appear to you through some grand or promising inclination. It can appear in the guise of your deficiencies, making you focus on the one or two things that you are inevitably good at. Working at these skills, you learn the value of discipline and see the rewards you get from your efforts. Like a lotus flower, your skills will expand outward from a center of strength and confidence. Do not envy those who seem to be naturally gifted. It is often a curse, as such types rarely learn the value of diligence and focus, and they pay for this later in life. This strategy applies as well to any setbacks and difficulties we may experience. In such moments, it is generally wise to stick to the few things we know and do well, and to reestablish our confidence. Daily law. When in doubt, focus on the things you know you do well. Expand outward from the center. January 14. Avoid the false path. At the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are, and you know what you want. Lao Tzu. A false path in life is generally something we are attracted to for the wrong reasons. Money, fame, attention, and so on. If it is attention we often experience a kind of emptiness inside that we are hoping to fill with false love of public approval. Because the field we choose does not correspond with our deepest inclinations, we rarely find the fulfillment that we crave. Our work suffers for this, and the attention we may have gotten in the beginning starts to fade, a painful process. If it is money and comfort that dominate our decision, we are most often acting out of anxiety and the need to please our parents. They may steer us out towards something lucrative out of care and concern. But lurking underneath this can be something else, perhaps a bit of envy that we have more freedom than they had when they were young. Your strategy must be twofold. First, to realize as early as possible that you have chosen your career for the wrong reason, before your confidence takes a hit. And second, to actively rebel against those forces that have pushed you away from your true path. Scoff at the end for attention and approval, they will lead you astray. Feel some anger and resentment at the parental forces that want to foist upon you an alien vocation. It is a healthy part of your development to follow a path independent of your parents and to establish your own identity. Let your sense of rebellion fill you with energy and purpose. Daily law. If you're on the false path, get off. Find energy in rebellion. January 15. Let a sense of purpose guide you. Just as a well-filled day brings blessed sleep, so a well-employed life brings blessed death. Leonardo da Vinci. What we lack most in the modern world is a sense of larger purpose to our lives. In the past, it was organized religion that we often supply this. But most of us now lived in a secularized world. We, human animals, are unique. We must build our own world. We do not simply react to events out of biological scripting. But without a sense of direction provided to us, we tend to flounder. We don't know how to fill up and structure our time. There seems to be no defining purpose to our lives. We are perhaps not conscious of this emptiness, but it infects us in all kinds of ways. Feeling that we are called to accomplish something is the most positive way for us to supply the sense of purpose and direction. It is a religious like quest for each of us. This quest should not be seen as selfish or antisocial. It is, in fact, connected to something much larger than our individual lives. Our evolution as a species has depended on the creation of a tremendous diversity of skills and ways of thinking. Daily law. Think back on the moments when you feel deeply and personally connected to an activity. Think about the pleasure it brought you. In such activities are signs of your true purpose. January 16. There are no superior callings. Keep in mind that your contribution to the culture can come in many forms. You don't have to become an entrepreneur or figure largely on the world stage. You can do just as well operating as one person in a group or organization. As long as you retain a strong point of view that is your own and use this to gently exert your influence, your path can involve physical labor and craft. You can take pride in excellence of the work, leaving your particular stamp of on the quality. It can be raising a family in the best way possible. In any event, you will want to go as far as you can in cultivating your uniqueness and the originality that goes with it. In a world full of people who seem largely interchangeable, you cannot be replaced. You are one of a kind. Your combination of skills and experience is not replicable. That represents true freedom and the ultimate power we humans can possess. Daily law. No calling is superior to another. What matters is that it be tied to a personal need and inclination, and that your energy moves you toward improvement and continuous learning from experience. January 17. The true source of creativity. You must alter your very concept of creativity and try to see it from a new angle. Most often, people associate creativity with some intellectual, a particular way of thinking. The truth is that creative activity is one that involves the entire self, our emotions, our levels of energy, our characters, and our minds. To make a discovery, to invent something that connects with the public, to fashion a work of art that is meaningful, it inevitably requires time and effort. This often entails years of experimentation, various setbacks and failures, and the need to maintain a high level of focus. You must have patience and faith that what you are doing will yield something important. You could have the most brilliant mind, teeming with knowledge and ideas, but if you choose the wrong subject or problem to attack, you can run out of energy and interest. In such a case, all of your intellectual brilliance will lead to nothing. Daily law. Work at what connects you emotionally, and ideas will come to you. January 18. Stop being so nice. Everybody carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Carl Jung. You pay a greater price for being so nice and deferential than for consciously showing your shadow. First, to follow the latter path, you must begin by respecting your own opinions more and those of others less, particularly when it comes to your areas of expertise, to the field you have immersed yourself in. Trust your native genius and the ideas you have come up with. Second, get into the habit in your daily life of asserting yourself more and compromising less. Do this under control and at the opportune moments. Third, start caring less what people think of you. You will feel a tremendous sense of liberation. Fourth, realize that at times you must offend and hurt people who block your path, who have ugly values, who unjustly criticize you. Use such moments of clear injustice to bring out your shadow and show it proudly. Fifth, feel free to play the impudent, willful child who mocks the stupidity and hypocrisy of others. Finally, flout the very conventions that others follow so scrupulously. Daily law. Keep in mind that power lies in asserting your uniqueness, even if that offends some other people along the way. Study your shadow side today. January 19. Listen to your inner authority. You are here not merely to gratify your impulses and consume what others have made, but to make and contribute as well, to serve a higher purpose. To serve this higher purpose, you must cultivate what is unique about you. Stop listening so much to the words and opinions of others, telling you who you are and what you should like and dislike. Judge things and people for yourself. Question what you think and why you feel a certain way. Know yourself thoroughly, your innate tastes and inclinations, the fields that naturally attract you. Work every day on improving those skills that mesh with your unique spirit and purpose. Add to the needed diversity of culture while creating something that reflects your uniqueness. Embrace what makes you different. Not following this course is the real reason you feel depressed at times. Moments of depression are a call to listen again to your inner authority. Daily law. Reflect on those moments in life when you were active, which means followed your own path, and those moments when you were passive, which means followed what others wanted. Compare the emotions you experience. January 20. See mastery as salvation. The misery that oppresses you lies not in your profession, but in yourself. What man in the world would not find his situation intolerable if he chooses a craft, an art, indeed any form of life without experiencing an inner calling? Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. The world is teeming with problems, many of them of our own creation. To solve them will require a tremendous amount of effort and creativity. Relying on genetics, technology, magic, or being nice and natural will not save us. We require the energy not only to address practical matters, but also to forge new institutions and orders that fit our changed circumstances. We must create our own world or we will die from inaction. We need to find our way back to the concept of mastery that defined us as species so many millions of years ago. This is not mastery for the purpose of dominating nature or other people, but for determining our fate. The passive ironic attitude is not cool or romantic, but pathetic and destructive. You are setting an example of what can be achieved as master in the modern world. You are contributing to the most important cause of all, the survival and prosperity of human race. In a time of stagnation. And you must convince yourself of the following. People get the mind and quality of brain that they deserve through their actions in life. Daily law. You must see your attempt at attaining mastery as something extremely necessary and positive. January 21. Depending on others is misery. There is nothing worse than feeling dependent on other people. Dependency makes you vulnerable to all kinds of emotions, betrayal, disappointment, frustration that play havoc with your mental balance. Being self-reliant is critical. To make yourself less dependent on others and so-called experts, you need to expand your repertoire of skills. And you need to feel more confident in your own judgment. Understand, we tend to overestimate other people's abilities, after all. They're trying hard to make it look as if they knew what they were doing. And we tend to underestimate our own. You must compensate for this by trusting yourself more and others less. It is important to remember, though, that being self-reliant does not mean burdening yourself with petty details. You must be able to distinguish between small matters that are best left to others and larger issues that require your attention and care. Daily law. It is simple. Depending on others is misery. Depending on yourself is power. January 22. Use resistance and negative spurs. Every negative is a positive. The bad things that happen to me somehow make them good. 50 Cent. The key to success in any field is first developing skills in various areas, which you can later combine in unique and creative ways. But the process of doing so can be tedious and painful, as you become aware of your limitations and relative lack of skill. Most people, consciously or unconsciously, seek to avoid tedium, pain, and any form of adversity. They try to put themselves in places where they will face less criticism and minimize their chances of failure. You must choose to move in the opposite direction. You want to embrace negative experiences, limitations, and even pain as the perfect means of building up your skill levels and sharpening your sense of purpose. Daily law. Embrace negative experiences. When was the last time you failed, felt embarrassed, got criticized? What were you doing? What did the experience teach you? January 23. Create a ladder of descending goals. Operating with long-term goals will bring you tremendous clarity and resolve. These goals, a project or business to create for instance, can be relatively ambitious, enough to bring out the best in you. The problem, however, is that they will also tend to generate anxiety as you look at all you have to do to reach them from the present vantage point. To manage such anxiety, you must create a ladder of smaller goals along the way, reaching down to the present. Such objectives are simpler the further down the ladder you go, and you can realize them in relatively short time frames, giving you moments of satisfaction and sense of progress. Always break tasks into smaller bites. Each day or week, you must have a micro goals. This will help you focus and avoid entanglements or detours that will waste your energy. At the same time, you want to continually remind yourself of larger goals to avoid losing track of it or getting too mired in details. Periodically, return to your original vision and imagine the immense satisfaction you will have when it comes to fruition. This will give you clarity and inspire you forward. You will also want a degree of flexibility built into the process. At certain moments, you reassess your progress and adjust the various goals as necessary, constantly learning from experience and adapting and improving your original objective. Daily law. Remember that what you are after is a series of practical results and accomplishments, not a list of unrealized dreams and aborted projects. Working with smaller embedded goals will keep you moving in such a direction. January 24. Combine your fascinations. If you are young and just starting out in your career, you will want to explore a relatively wide field related to your inclinations. For instance, if your affinity in words and writing, try all different types of writing until you hit upon the right fit. If you are older and have more experience, you will want to take the skills you have already developed and find a way to adapt them more in direction of your true calling. Steve Jobs, as one example, merged these two great fascination, technology and design. Daily law. Keep in mind that your calling could be combining several fields that fascinate you. Keep the process open-ended. Your experience will instruct you as to the way. January 25. Change yourself from within, little by little. We humans tend to fixate on what we can see with our eyes. It is the most animal part of our nature. When we look at the changes in other people's lives, we see the good luck that someone had in meeting a person with all of the right connections and the funding. We see the project that brings the money and the attention. In other words, we see the visible signs of opportunity and success in our own lives, but we are grasping at an illusion. What really allows for such dramatic changes are the things that occur inside a person. The slow accumulation of knowledge and skills, the incremental improvements in work habits, and the ability to withstand criticism. Any change in people's fortunes is merely the visible manifestation of all that deep preparation over time. By essentially ignoring this internal invisible aspect, we fail to change anything fundamental within ourselves. And so, in few years' time, we reach our limits. Yet again, we grow frustrated. We crave change. We grab at something quick and superficial, and we remain prisoners forever of these recurring patterns in our lives. The answer is to reverse this perspective. Stop fixating on what other people are saying and doing. Stop fixating on the money, the connections, the outward appearance of things. Instead, look inward. Focus on the smaller internal changes that lay the groundwork for a much larger change in fortune. It is the difference between grasping at an illusion and immersing yourself in reality. And reality is what will liberate and transform you. What would you work on if no one was looking? If money were no object? January 26. Avoid the counter forces to mastery. What weakens the force within us, what makes you not feel it or even doubt its existence, is the degree to which you have succumbed to another force in life, social pressures to conform. These counter forces can be very powerful. You want to fit into a group? Unconsciously, you might feel that what makes you different is embarrassing or painful. Your parents often act as counterforce as well. They may seek to direct you to a career path that is lucrative and comfortable. If these counter forces become strong enough, you can lose complete contact with your uniqueness, with who you really are. Your inclinations and desires become modeled on those of others. This can set you off on a very dangerous path. You end up choosing a career that does not really suit you. Your desire and interest slowly wane and your work suffers for it. You come to see pleasure and fulfillment as something that comes from outside your work. Because you are increasingly less engaged in your career, you fail to pay attention to changes going on in the field. You fall behind the times and pay a price for this. At moments when you must make important decisions, you must flounder or follow what others are doing because you have no sense of inner direction or radar to guide you. You have a broken contact with your destiny as formed at birth. At all costs, you must avoid such a fate. Daily law. The process of following your life's tasks all the way to mastery can easily begin at the point in life. The hidden force within you is always there and ready to be engaged, but only if you can silence the noise from others. January 27. The real secret. The hunger for the magical shortcuts and simple formulas for success has been a constant throughout history. But in the end, all of this searching is centered on something that doesn't exist. And while you lose yourself in these endless fantasies, you ignore the one real power that you actually possess. And unlike magic or simplistic formulas, we can see the material effects of this power in history. The great discoveries and inventions, the magnificent buildings and works of art, the technological prowess we possess, all works of the masterful mind. This power brings to those who possess it the kind of connection to reality and the ability to alter the world that the mystics and magicians of the past could only dream of. Over the centuries, people have placed a wall around mastery. They have called it genius and have thought of it as inaccessible. They have seen it as a byproduct or product of privilege, inborn talent, or just the right alignment of the stars. They have made it seem as if it were as elusive as magic. But that wall is imaginary. This is the real secret. The brain that we possess is the work of 6 million years of development. And more than anything else, this evolution of the brain was designed to lead us to mastery, the latent power within us all. Daily law. Work to create the kind of mind you desire, unleashing the masterful mind within. You will be at the vanguard of those who are exploring the extended limits of human willpower. January 28. The path is not linear. You begin by choosing a field or position that roughly corresponds to your inclinations. This initial position offers you room to maneuver and important skills to learn. You don't want to start with something too lofty, too ambitious. You need to make a living and establish some confidence. Once on this path, you discover certain side routes that attract you, while other aspects of this field leave you cold. You adjust and perhaps move to a related field, continuing to learn more about yourself but always expanding off your scale base. You take what you do for others and make it your own. Eventually, you will hit upon a particular field, niche, or opportunity that suits you perfectly. You will recognize it when you find it because it will spark that a childlike sense of wonder and excitement. It will feel right. Once you found, everything will fall into place. You will learn more quickly and more deeply. Your skill level will reach a point where you will be able to claim your independence from within the group you work for and move out on your own. In a world in which there is so much we cannot control, this will bring you to the ultimate form of power. You will determine your circumstances. As your own master, you will no longer be subject to the whims of tyrannical bosses and scheming peers. Daily law. You must see your career or vocational path more as a journey with twists and turns rather than a straight line. January 29. Become who you are. Some 2,600 years ago, the ancient Greek poet Pindar wrote, become who you are by learning who you are. What he meant is the following. You are born with a particular makeup and tendencies that mark you as a piece of faith. It is who you are to the core. Some people never become who they are. They stop trusting in themselves. They conform to the tastes of others, and they end up wearing a mask that hides their true nature. Daily law. If you allow yourself to learn who you really are by paying attention to the voice and force within you, then you can become what you were fated to become, an individual, a master. January 30. Trust the process. Let us say we are learning the piano. In the beginning, we are outsiders. When we first study the piano, the keyboard looks rather intimidating. We don't understand the relationships between the keys, the chords, the pedals, and everything else that goes into creating music. Although we might enter the excitement about what we can learn, we quickly realize how much hard work there is ahead of us. The great danger is that we give in to feelings of boredom, impatience, fear, and confusion. We stop observing and learning. The process comes to a halt. If, on the other hand, we manage these emotions and allow time to take its course, something remarkable begins to take shape. As we continue to observe and follow the lead of others, we gain clarity, learning the rules and seeing how things work and fit together. If we keep practicing, we gain fluency. Basic skills are mastered, allowing us to take the newer and more exciting challenges. We begin to see connections that were invisible to us before. We slowly gain confidence in our ability to solve problems or overcome weaknesses through sheer persistence. At a certain point, we move from student to practitioner. Instead of just learning how others do things, we bring our own style and individuality into play. As years go by and we remain faithful to this process, yet another leap takes place to mastery. The keyboard is no longer something outside of us. It is internalized and becomes part of our nervous system, our fingertips. We have learned the rules so well that we can now be the ones to break it or rewrite them. Trust the process. Time is the essential ingredient of mastery. Use it to your advantage. January 31. The source of all power. Do not try to bypass the work of discovering your life's task or imagine that it will simply come to you naturally. Although it may come to a few people early in life or in a lightning bolt moment, for most of us, it requires continual introspection and effort. Experimenting with the skills and options related to your personality and inclinations is not only the single most essential step in developing a high sense of purpose and attaining mastery, it is perhaps the most important step in life in general. Daily law. Knowing in a deep way who you are, your uniqueness, will make it that much easier to avoid all of life's other pitfalls.